What is up, everybody? I'm your Legendary Commander, and welcome back to Space Engineers. In this video, we're going to be talking about the better stone mod, and more particularly, which ore actually provides the most iron, because so far on Mars, that has been my biggest problem in my Stuck on Mars series. What we're actually going to be looking at is the material you gain from dropping 100 ore into the refinery, as well as the time it takes to process that ore, because it doesn't matter how much you get if it takes 3 years to process. One other thing to take note of is that these refineries are set on the lowest setting. That way I get an actual chance to measure how long it takes to refine these resources. So the first one we're going to look at is the crown jewel of the better stone mod, and that is dense iron. Dense iron gives you 90 iron, and it does it in approximately 6.25 seconds. Next we're going to look at Gluconate, and boy did this one take a while to refine. It is a mixture of iron and cobalt, so that may be the reason for why it took so long to refine, but it took a long time if you're just looking for that iron. So I highly suggest staying away from this one. So 100 Gluconate took 1 minute 45 seconds to refine, and it only produced 23 iron and 20 cobalt. If you're looking for iron, this is one you want to stay away from. This resource is going to take way too long and hog up your refineries, and you're going to get a very slow production. So your next one here is iron, but this is a modded iron because this is from the mod rather than the actual iron. This one actually is really surprising in its production, as it produces ice and iron, which is kind of neat that it does that. And who doesn't need a little ice for their hydrogen engines every once in a while? We can see an increased yield of iron in this one, as well as a respectable time of 5.72 seconds. This is by far, in all accounts, superior to Gluconate. However, if you could have found dense iron or iron, you probably wouldn't be watching this video, so let's move on to another combination, or Commasite. This one produces iron, nickel, and cobalt. As we can see, this is another slow one, and the exact time was 55 seconds and produced 26.4 iron. This did also produce 17.4 nickel as well as 10 cobalt in 55 seconds. And it is a bigger combination of material. However, it's still very slow if you're looking for iron. I would stay away from this one as well. But if I had to choose, I'd pick it over Gluconate. Next we move on to Pyrite, and boy does this one produce compared to the last one. If you see it, you should definitely stop and go mine some of it. Pyrite produces iron as well as gold at the same time. In the end, this one produced 55 iron and 0.2 gold per 100 units. And it also did this in a reasonable time frame, with an approximate time of about 22 seconds. Sorry about the mouse being in the way. If you see this one, I do highly suggest stopping and grabbing it. There's probably some other good resources laying around too, like actual veins of gold. And the next one we move on to is a bane of my existence, Tannite. Tannite is probably one of the worst materials you can get. However, it is not the worst, as we've already seen in the past. Tannite is a slow burner at a minute 23, almost a minute 24, and produce 35 iron and 20 nickel. If you're really short nickel, what I would suggest is just go mine a butt ton of stone. It's far cheaper. Well, it does take up a lot more space, but it's much faster in a refinery than trying to mine Tannite and then refine that stuff. Next, we're going to move on to Hapkite, and I do like Hapkite to a certain degree. Hapkite is a little faster about refining than Tannite, and while you get silicon instead of nickel, I think it's worth it over the Tannite. Hapkite produced the 35 iron just as the Tannite did, but it produced it in 1/3 less the time, taking only 26.5 seconds. While we didn't get any nickel, we did get some silicon as well, getting a total of 45 silicon, but no one really cares about the silicon. We're here about the iron. Now finally we move on to our last ore, which is standard iron. This is the iron that the game produces, and it produced 70 iron and nothing else, and it did it within about 5.5 seconds. So now that we've gone through all the different ores that contain iron in them, we can make some conclusions here, given the fact that we know how much you get produced per 100 units of iron, as well as we learn the rate of production. And I've come to these conclusions. If you cannot find any of the base levels of iron, be it the vanilla version of iron, dense iron, or actual iron, your best bets are going to be Hapkite and Pyrite. Both of these produce enough iron in a reasonable time frame to make them worth something. However, the other resources on this list are not a good substitute for iron. They are all going to take too long, being closer to about a minute processing time and giving you far less ore. Now you might ask yourself, why are you using this? Why are you doing this to yourself with this mod? Why not just use standard vanilla iron and not have all these extra mods? Well, I'm gonna answer that with this. Obviously, you're freaking crazy. If you just want resources and you don't want to go through all the complications, then you should just use the vanilla materials. However, if you want to complicate the game, which is what I've done to myself to punish myself, make it harder, um, that is the reason why this process is even important. If you're just looking to play Space Engineers and you don't want to be hunting down iron and making iron hard to get a hold of, this is not a mod for you, because this mod will torture you unless you can find real sources of iron. Because not only does it make it harder to find iron and then refine it down and have a reasonable amount of iron, it also puts the resources much deeper into the ground, which means you have to dig and do more work. So to be mining this stuff, you're relatively a crazy person. Then if you add something like all scrap on top of it, you make it even worse for yourself. Now again, these refineries were running on realistic standards. Had you sped these up, these would have processed a lot faster. And if you're playing with a faster refinery, that's fine, because these material times are going to go down, multiplied by the speed of your refinery. At that point, maybe Tannite is worth something, or some of these other materials might be worth actually processing down. But at a realistic time speed, you're going to want to make sure you go gather Hapkite, and you want to make sure you go get Pyrite when you see it. And you want to find real sources of iron instead of waiting for 3 years to get 10 iron. But with that all said, I'm going to call this video to a close here. I really do hope this helps somebody, because I know I was struggling trying to figure out which material was the best, and now I know every material and which ones I should be looking for, and how now I've been skipping over Hapkite, and I should have been grabbing Hapkite long before I ever picked up the Tannite. Could have saved myself a lot of struggle and time wasted. But like I said, that's going to be it for this one. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Make sure to tell your friends. But y'all take care, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye!